Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Justa's Conversation, right here on Usala Radio, with your host, Brian O'Neill and Luis Gonzalez.
Welcome once again to Justice Conversations with Dr. Brian O'Neill, Luis Suave Gonzalez. And we have a guest today in the studio. That's Alfredo Dominich. Did I get that right?
Yes, Dominic, yeah.
All right. And he's got quite a story. Alfredo did 18 years, was wrongfully convicted of first-degree homicide in Pennsylvania. He's been out since 2005, and he'll be telling you his story, and we'll also talk a little bit in general about wrongful convictions and wrongful conviction compensation. So, Alfredo, why don't you just start by talking about your saga and how this all got started?
Oh, well, it's all started in May 29, 1987. I was in this neighborhood. I was arrested right here under the train station.
Wow.
From, I think it was close to from the Dolphin. And somebody got killed in the area, and we got arrested in that particular area. They're accusing us of killing somebody.
So, you went to trial.
We went to trial. This, can I say a prostitute? A prostitute. Yeah, there was a prostitute who accusing us of killing another Hispanic guy. In the preliminary hearing, we went about 3 to 5 times to the preliminary hearing. Nobody was there in the hearing. The judge tell the DA, you don't bring somebody by a specific day, I'm going to drop the charges these people. And the last day, somebody showed, and this prostitute came and accused us of killing a Puerto Rican guy. She told him during the preliminary hearing that I was the shooter and that my friend was the driver in the car, and that we got away. And for some reason, we came back to the area.
So, the basis of your conviction was her testimony.
Yeah, that's it. Right. No gunpowder, nothing.
Right.
So basically, he was convicted on a mistake of identity type stuff.
Right. Now,
On
was
the
this
word of a prostitute.
right?
You know, he ended up serving 18.
Yeah, but I don't think it was mistake of identity because 9 months later, the preliminary hearing was today. 9 months later, when we went to trial, she came to testify, and according to the doctor, the one forensic that check the body, he said that the person was shot at 8 feet. No, at 1 feet and a half. At 1 foot and a half, foot to foot and a half. But the prostitute was telling in transcripts the shot was shot about 8 feet. And when she came to testify, she accused my friend of being the shooter, and I was the driver. And somehow she started getting nervous. She started crying, and they asked for recess. And 45 minutes, an hour later, came back, and she switched again. No, the other one was the shooter, and the other one was the driver. She switched the story 3 times.
So, was this a jury trial or
A jury trial.
jury trial?
Yeah, you can see, I still remember the jury face. They don't want to be there. They want to leave. They want to go home. You can see that these people want to finish with this and get out of City Hall.
How long did they deliberate before they rendered the verdict?
About 2 hours
Wow.
or less.
So-
It was quick. It was quick. It was time taken for
So in
guilty.
4 hours, they determined the fate of 2 innocent people
Wow.
and sentenced them to life in prison. How
E-
often?
Even they her say one story, 45 minutes later, she switched the story again to say that I was the shooter. My friend was the shooter, and the third time she said, I was the shooter.
I mean, how often do we see this in the criminal justice system that you put somebody on trial for 4 hours and just determine their fate with really no evidence, just on the word of somebody that accusing them?
Yeah.
You know, and the messed up part about it is that it happens all the time to minority people, and not only in this city but across the country. We just don't hear them type of stories, but it happen. It's still happening today, where they where they get minority people, poor people from urban communities and accuse them of these crimes and just put them in trial for an hour, 2 hours, and just get rid of them and you're supposed to go away.
Get the next person.
Right. Now, Alfredo, did you have a public defender?
Yeah, court-appointed lawyer.
Right.
Yeah, court-appointed lawyer. And the reason I call her a prostitute because she admitted in record that she was a prostitute. And also my lawyer showed me a list of all her crime. I remember counting about 18 to 20 something different charge in the list. And I don't understand why the police did that to me and to my friend.
Do you think that she had some charges dropped herself in order to in exchange for her testimony?
No, what do you mean? That she was
Do you think
involved in the crime?
Well, involved in some other
No,
crime.
she
perhaps.
was not. She was not.
Okay.
I know that. Later, I found out there was another story on the case because what happened, according to the investigation, I found out later that the guy who got killed owed some money to some people from drug dealing, and the guy got killed for the death. But we don't know these people. I don't know where the police got this woman to come and to testify against us. And I found out later after the investigation. Even the family of the victim, they thought I was the killer. And a couple of years later, they found out that they got the wrong person. And they tried to tell the DA office during that time, and they don't want to listen. They don't want to put my case in the record to open the case again.
I mean, because it's easy to just say, you know what, we got 2 people in jail, convicted, the jury spoke, why reopen the case? We don't care if the family, like he said, stated, man. And his case, he had the family, the victim's family,
Right.
advocating like, we know they're not the one. And the DA's office still, like, we got the right person. You know, it's a travesty of justice.
Well, what changed, Alfredo? What caused them to listen?
I don't remember the name of. There was a Chinese guy who got released before my release, and my lawyer found out that the same detective was in that case was in my case, and my lawyer convinced Lynn Abraham, I think,
It was the DA at the time.
the DA at the time,
Right.
convinced her to reopen the case, at least to check my case. And she assigned McCain, I think some name McCain.
Ed McCain.
She assigned him the case to reopen again. And when he read the transcripts, everything, he probably saw something wrong. And he want the 2 women to get lie detector. There wasn't the shooting. And he wanted a lie detector from me and one from Ivan Serrano, my co-defender. And the 2 guys got the lie detector first. They passed that lie detector. And after they passed the interview too. They gave me a lie detector to me first. I passed with 99.9%. I was telling the truth about my innocence. And the DA wanted to talk to me. And he spent about, I guess, about 3 or 4 hours in his office talking, asking questions, trying to confuse me, stuff like that. And during that time, I mentioned to him, that when I was 11 years in prison, a court-appointed lawyer offered me 10 to 20 if I plead guilty, which I tell the lawyer, are you crazy? I said, I'm innocent. My friend's innocent. Well, how do you want me to take a deal? When he looked at me, he looked like I was the crazy, because I didn't get the opportunity. Because I can't take a deal. I mentioned that to the DA in my interview. At the end of the interview, he know that I passed the lie detector. At the end of the interview, he asked me, Alfredo, if I had the power to let you go tomorrow, do you plead guilty today? I said, no, I can't. I can't take a deal. About 20 seconds later, he asked again, Alfredo, if I had the power to let you go tomorrow, do you plead guilty today? I said, listen. I look at his eyes, listen. My friend and I are innocent. I don't took the deal 7 years ago. I'm not going to take it now. I'd rather die in prison. The guy left, And he left the room, and inside my brain, I can hear my voice say, "You go, Alfredo, you fuck it up. You." He said, "You fuck it up. That's another opportunity." But at the same time, I got peace in my heart, in my brain, in my body, that I'm innocent. That I'm probably not going to be the first person who's going to die in prison innocent, or the last to go to die in prison. And that's what my peace. About 6 months later, they dropped the charge.
Now, the person was identified as your co-conspirator. Was he also pressured to testify against you?
No, at the beginning, they offered him 2 years, I think. 2 years to testify. That's what he told me.
But he refused.
He refused, yeah.
Wow. Well, that's kind of rare, too, I think.
I mean, but that's the way the system rolls.
Sure.
The system, when they get innocent people, and at that time in the 80s, it was a lot of political stuff going on in City Hall. A lot of judges was being indicted for corruption. So there was the pressure to solve cases by all means necessary. And they came to urban communities. If you notice, a lot of these wrongful convictions that are being overturned today are people from urban communities. The 9133 district, which is this district around here, all the way to Huntington Park. That they had the most wrongful convictions overturned recently. So that tells you that in the early 80s, we had a bunch of cops that was running around gun-ho trying to solve cases by all means necessary. And if you fell into that grit, you just got because a lot of us in the early 80s, we did not have the money to hire the powerful attorneys and the resources that we need to prove our innocence.
Well, it's great. Alfredo's case, that you're a lawyer and followed through.
Yeah.
And
he worked pro bono, man. I feel sad. I wish I got some money because I want to pay him.
right.
But that's not the trial lawyer, though.
I understand.
That's not the trial lawyer. Let's be clear. That's not the trial lawyer. Because most of the time when we go to trial, most of the trial lawyers that we had in the 80s were lawyers that was working in cahoot with the district attorneys. So they did minimum work to prove anybody's innocent in the courtroom. It took another lawyer years later. Because I remember, because me and Alfredo was in the same institution, I remember, took another lawyer years later.
How did you hook up with the
we
with
met
that lawyer?
back in 1988, 89, Campbell.
88.
And how did he find you or you find him?
What do you mean?
Who, me?
No, I'm talking about the lawyer.
Oh, the lawyer.
Oh,
that
no,
helped you.
remember Wilfredo Santiago? Wilfredo Santiago recommended this lawyer, and my sister hired him for $5,000 for do some appeal. But after the appeal, he came to see me. And he told me, I got bad news, I got good news. I said, give me the bad news first. I said, we lost the appeal. We might have to go to federal court. Okay, give me the good news. Oh, I know that your friend are innocent. And I'm going to stay with you all the way to the end. And he stayed with me without paying him. He did it pro bono.
And with that note, we got to go on a commercial break. You listening to Alfredo Dominic on Usala Radio and Justice Conversation.
Our hearts are made stronger by how we treat others.
Put her there.
The light you share can impact those around you, but so can the darkness.
Later, twerps.
Did Pete saying mean things bother you?
So when you reach out to another person, take a moment to consider how they will feel and let your heart be the key to making a difference. Because of you, someone's entire day, year, or even life can change.
In every heart, there's hope.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies. Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Because of you, I feel not alone in this world. And you let me know that it only takes one person to make you feel wanted.
Welcome back to Justice Conversations with Dr. Brian O'Neill and Luis Suave Gonzalez, joined here with Alfredo Dominic, who's talking about his wrongful conviction, in which he has been out since 2005, served 18 years for first-degree homicide, was later exonerated of those charges. And he was talking about the whole trip through the legal system, and then also you talked about the fact that you're not bitter about any of those participants. You didn't take this personally in that respect. Yeah. I guess you're talking about that being sort of a poisonous thing to be bitter.
Yeah, because you will never be happy in your life if you keep this hate or something or bitter. I feel in peace with myself. Mm-hmm. Even we lost the lawsuit, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm. Now we should talk about compensation. There are 26 states that don't have compensation laws for wrongful convictions. Pennsylvania is one of the ones that do not have compensation laws. And so that, of course, is different from different states. The most generous, interestingly enough, is Texas, $80,000 per year per wrongful conviction. In the last 25 years, Texas paid out a total of $93 million to those wrongfully convicted and incarcerated at some point.
Still won't take it.
Right. I know. I don't think too many people in the general public would say, okay, for $80,000, I'll go to prison. I don't think because it caused so many other ramifications in your life and long-term effects. Even if you're later exonerated, there's going to be people that don't believe.
Yeah.
And not only that, there's no way to put a monetary value on somebody's life potential.
Right.
And what they could have been and that time. So there's no monetary value. And in his case, it's even worse because in the last year and a half, we've seen almost 9-10 people in the city of Philadelphia exonerated that's been getting compensated.
From lawsuits.
That was getting compensated for being wrongfully convicted. And here you got an Hispanic man, and I say that for a reason. Here you got two Hispanic men that was clear, not only by one expunged, not only by one of the deadliest district attorney in the city of Philadelphia, expunged their case. That speak highly of their innocent. Because if anybody know Lee Abraham, she was labeled the deadliest district attorney in America. Ed McCain was one of the most corrupt, vicious district attorneys in the city of Philadelphia. Those are the two district attorneys they cleared out. So it speaks value to their innocent. They should be compensated, but they wasn't.
Right.
And it leads me to believe that the question, is it because they're Hispanic? I don't know. That's a question that the people out there can answer. Do race play a motive in compensating them when everybody else is getting compensated? I don't know. Y'all tell us.
I think it's a valid question. So Philadelphia's paid more attention to this. There's of course, the DA now offers a conviction integrity unit, and since 2018, 10 have been shown to be wrongfully convicted, and that's just since 2018. So
when they created the unit, the integrity unit?
Oh, as soon as Krasner came in office.
Oh,
right.
That's when he
right.
came on? Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was before that.
Right.
But the point is, like, when you look at the totality of the case, it's like Lee Abraham was the deadliest district attorney in America, has the most conviction with people serving life and on death row. This is the district attorney they cleared two Hispanic men.
Yeah.
So there should be no question or doubt about their guilt or innocent. they're innocent. They got expunged. And you mean to tell me that their 18 years incarcerated ain't worth nothing? You stole their life potential. You stole their life potential. You are responsible for whatever depression or traumatic experience they are going through today because you took that from them. They should be compensated.
Sure. I think it also seems to be very difficult for that part of the system to acknowledge mistakes. And mistakes happen. I mean, even if it's a very low percentage, if you're talking over 2 million people incarcerated in this country, even if it's only 1 or 2%, that's still a hell of a lot of people. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. I heard in a Netflix show about United States got the biggest population in the prison system, even it's 5% of the world community, but they got 25%.
That's correct.
Of the prisoners.
Yes.
Of the prisoners.
That is correct.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's crazy. If United States the 5% of the planet,
right?
But they got 25%,
quarter
of the people in prison. That they don't make no sense.
No, it don't make no sense. But if you look at by race, and I keep saying that because the prison system is racist. It's built on racism. The prison system is just another stage of what was in slavery.
Yeah,
that's all it is, you know. And who was in slavery? Minority people.
Yeah.
Who suffered the most from mass incarceration? Minority people. You know, so we got to call it like it is. Like, the system is racist, and people are trying to fix it now, and hopefully we get it done. But until it happens, you know, we're going to still be having people like Alfredo getting wrongful convicted by the state.
I agree with you. There's also some evidence about eyewitness identification, some of the ways that people are wrongfully convicted and what shows up statistically as being significant.
Yeah.
Erroneous eyewitness identification, false confessions.
Yeah.
Also very high on the list is criminal behavior, or I should say unethical behavior in many cases on the part of the district attorney's office.
Yeah. On the police.
Yeah.
More the police, because the police is the one on the street investigating, and they give information to the district attorney. They know who's telling the truth or not.
Yeah, but it's the district, it's the district attorney's
ultimate decision.
Ultimate decision to prosecute.
Mm-hmm. That is true. And when you were talking about eyewitness identification, what helps explain what Suave was talking about and why people of color are more affected in some cases, because we know that research shows that cross-racial eyewitness people do very poor when they are tested in those kinds of situations. That people do a very bad job crossing racial lines, making positive ID on people.
Right.
And so a lot of times that's the basis for somebody's conviction. There is no DNA. I think that's another myth in the public is that, well, since you have DNA, you can say for sure whether somebody's guilty or not. But a lot of cases don't have DNA.
No.
And there's no DNA evidence to even suggest anything because it's not part of the process. Or in some cases, it's too old or it's been tainted, so it's not helpful anyway. So it's by no means, it's not like you see on television with CSI where they have a lab and an hour they have the results. You know, it doesn't actually work that way in real life.
You know, but the thing is that, like he said earlier, you have prosecutors that they know some of these cops are dirty, and they keep recycling these cops to come to court to give false testimony. And at the same time, they try to confuse people to signing false confessions because they know that if you sign a false confession or if you agree to plead guilty just to get out of jail, you can't sue. You can't sue. You done. So they try to block people from suing them. They're ready to say, you know what? We let you go tomorrow if you plead guilty. And for some people in prison, that's enticing. For some people in prison, of course I want to get out of prison. Some people would take that. That's why I commend him for not taking no deal. Even though it may seem crazy when you're serving a life sentence and somebody said, we let you go in a year.
Even people told me in prison, oh,
Yeah,
call your lawyer back.
But it's about living with yourself. It's
yeah.
about living with your conscience.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
And I don't know too many people that would do what you did, which is like, I'm not taking no deal. I'd rather die in prison.
Yeah.
Right? Because the average person, after they serve 20, 30 years, they just want to go home and get it over with. Like, I don't care about suing. I take the deal if you let me walk out of here to death.
Yeah.
The average person would do that. So for somebody to say, I'm not taking no deal, I'd rather die in prison, I ain't do that, you got to be commanded for that. You got to be commanded for that. There's not too many people. And I suggest to people out there that if you do get arrested, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Don't sign no confessions.
Right.
No matter how long they keep you in that chair, handcuffed, I want my lawyer. Because once you sign that confession, you are creating a world of problem, especially if you did not do what they say you did.
Yeah.
So, keep your mouth shut. Know your rights. Know your rights.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is very accurate. And a lot of times, even a lot lower level offenders, people that are not able to get bail, and so jailing them is part of the strategy to get a confession. So somebody sit there for 6-9 months while their job is gone, while their family's deteriorating, and then you say, okay, just plead to this, and it's like, and you can walk, and you can be on probation, and blah blah, and so people do it because they don't want to roll the dice. They've already lost so much sitting there in jail.
That's a temptation. People get tempted with that.
They lost so much already sitting in jail, but of course, that felony is going to follow them the rest of their life that they pled guilty to.
Right.
And that's going to be a huge mark and a huge handicap toward advancing in their lives. Mm-hmm. And so that's what a lot of amounts to the false confessions is a coercion of what happens when you're detained, which people of affluence don't have to deal with that because they can pay and walk.
Yeah.
That's why several states, New York most recently, has eliminated bail for low-level offenses and nonviolent offenses. Just recently did that. New Jersey is another state that got rid of it because of that type of scenario. And the fact is so discriminatory along financial lines, which also, of course, correspond with racial lines.
And again, I always say this. If they take you, if they detain you, and they put you in a cell with somebody, keep your mouth shut. Do not share your case. You have a lot of brothers and sisters in the prison system. They are looking for a get-out-of-jail card. And they will fabricate, they will read your case in the papers, and they will write the district attorney and tell them, well, such and such told me he did this and did that. And next thing you know, you going to court, and you got a surprise witness, and it's your cellmate. It's that guy that you was lifting weights in the yard or playing cards talking about, he told me this and he told me that. And sometimes that's the only evidence they have for a conviction.
Well, what you're talking about, there was just an article in the New York Times Magazine about 2 or 3 weeks ago about a notorious guy. It's been a long level of arrest, fraud, and sexual assaults. And he's made a living over testifying against other people incarcerated with him.
That's what they do.
And he's done this and gotten out to reoffend somewhere else. It's happened in numerous states even with this guy, and he put somebody on death row.
Oh, wow.
And so far, that person's still on death row.
Yep.
And this article was incredible because it showed this guy's track record. And there was no credibility with any of this. Like he always claimed the story was always the same. He was in a nearby cell, and he heard this and that, had a conversation with the guy. And it wasn't even credible because they would have to yell in some cases from how the distance was from one cell to the other. And for somebody to confide in almost a stranger, none of it was realistic. So he was able, though, because of this, to walk several times, to get probation and essentially go on with his life, which turned out to be bad because he created more victims in the process. And so that's really damning because he's now put somebody on death row.
Wow.
Right, but you know what's realistic? It's that you listening to a Justice Conversation on Osala Radio, and we got to go on a commercial break.
I'm going to.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back to Just Conversations with Dr. Brian O'Neill and Luis Suave Gonzalez, Alfredo Dominich, who's here talking about his wrongful conviction in which he did 18 years of a life sentence. Although this is not directly related to your case, Alfredo, because you were convicted on the basis of erroneous eyewitness testimony. A lot of people think that, DNA testing and CSIs of the world have made wrongful convictions a thing of the past. Well, in 2017, some of you might recall that there was a big scandal in Massachusetts caused by a rogue lab chemist. It caused 21,000 low-level drug cases to be thrown out.
Oh, wow.
Because the cases were all tainted through this by this corrupt, basically, chemist that worked in the crime lab. Not something ever shows up on CSI. But in fact, that's not that uncommon. A lot of times these people are overworked, underpaid, and not as professional necessarily as they look like on television. And so it's only as good as the people at the end of the science. The science is valid, but that doesn't mean other people within the community are valid or good at what they're doing. And so this has been a huge problem. And the other thing about that is that these are not always ironclad things, even though they may appear that way.
Right.
The system is still as human involved with
You said
it.
somebody in the lab made a bunch of mistakes.
Yes, on purpose.
On purpose, and it cost $21,000.
Yes, she was later charged. She admitted to tampering with evidence, forging test results, and lying about it.
Well, I think sometimes they get pressure from the DA office.
Well, she got 3 years in prison, which is
but
pretty mild.
But that's the crazy part. She got 3 years in prison.
Right.
But the people that she lied on probably did decades in prison.
Right. Some of them certainly could.
Some of them did decades.
Right.
So the numbers don't add up. To me, a person like that that's costing so many people lives to change should be given at least 10 years per case. Per case.
Right.
If you costing somebody to be on death row in life, and you doing that because of your making, you should be able to suffer the same consequences.
Well, not to mention the families that suffer of those people. It's not just the person themselves,
Exactly.
but all their family members.
I remember the case, what was the doctor in Philly? The abortion doctor. Kowalski? What was his name?
I can't remember his name.
The black doctor that was doing all them abortions. They gave him life. Mm-hmm. They gave him life. They should take the same model. When these prosecutors fabricate cases and everything, okay, since you cost that man his life, we're going to exchange his life for yours now. You go do some time now. Let's see how you like it. Because you cost that. But yet, 3 years. 3 years. By the time she get upstate, she's done. Because it probably take 18 to 24 months to get the case to trial. County time. She ain't do no time.
Right.
She destroyed all them lies, but she ain't do no time.
Well, she do probation, bro.
And she probably doing probation if she
Well, she's
if she
released
knows
now.
somebody.
She did 3 years. She's out now.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the state of the case currently.
You know, it just ain't right, man. That
Her name was Annie Ducan.
Miss Annie Ducan, you should be ashamed of yourself. If you live wherever you at, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because I guarantee you that out of them 21,000 cases, the majority of them was blacks and Hispanic. I guarantee you. Boston,
I wonder how many of these people kill themselves in prison after a while because a lot of people get depressed and kill
Well,
themselves.
people don't want to talk about that. You know, we ain't even get into that topic yet about the level of depression that you go through in a prison. You know, you get depressed even when you're guilty. It gets to that point where you feel I can't do this no more.
Yeah.
So just imagine if you are an innocent person in prison and you watching your mother die, you watching your father die, your family, brothers and sisters pass away, and you can't even attend the funeral. Just imagine how traumatic that is for an innocent person.
Sure.
And then you coming home and they telling you, okay, bye. You know, they don't even want to say, I'm sorry. They just say, you free to go. That is traumatic.
That's not to mention some of them had children might have gone down a wayward path because they didn't have guidance, because they're one of the main people. Those role models removed from their home.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of collateral damage
Yeah,
toward that.
And even though he's been home since 2005, it's still traumatic.
It's still like it was yesterday.
You know why? Because he's still feeling it. He's living it. He lived it. Can't nobody tell him otherwise because you never been in that place.
Right.
You never been in that place, man. And I always hear people, well, there is no innocent people. Well, if there's not, then tell Larry Krasner that because in the last year, they let like 10 people go. Exonerated.
I compare my life with the movie Groundhog Day. Remember
Groundhog Day, sure.
Keep waking
Yep.
the same
Bill
day.
Murray, yep.
That's it. I compare my life. Keep waking up every morning like if I'm free while I'm still in my cell.
Yeah, you know, it's traumatic, man. It's a traumatic experience, man, that nobody,
The sensation.
nobody should go through. You know, like I said earlier, to all the young people that listen to us and to all the mothers and fathers out there, sometimes you don't even have to commit a crime to end up in prison.
Right.
You could be at the wrong place and at the wrong time.
Right.
You know, and you could just look like somebody. Or somebody could be high and just say, you know what? He did it.
I remember, I saw this case, rape. I don't remember which city, but the woman kept looking at the rapist when he was raping her, and she wanted to memorize everything about him. And she testified they sentenced him to 20 years. About 2 years later, he had to be released because the guy who did it was next door to him.
Right.
And they found out there was the other guy. But when they put
Right.
the two pictures together, looked like twin brothers.
Right. Right.
And the woman was sad. She was embarrassed.
I remember that case.
Sad. A blonde woman.
Right.
They wrote a book on it, Picking Cotton.
Yep, Picking Cotton, exactly.
They wrote a
Excellent,
book on
excellent
it.
book.
I remember that woman. She
And,
was sad because she picked the wrong person.
Right.
And
She
the
was
thing
devastated
is,
by
man,
that.
And they call it also false memory syndrome.
Right.
They talk about Oprah Winfrey show one time. Somebody came to the studio, grabbed her purse, and
Right.
run away. And everybody in the audience picked the wrong person.
And
on the
sometimes
picture.
there's prejudice toward picking that person from, for example, the police that really want you to finger a particular person. So they will insinuate this is the guy to pick.
Yeah.
Are you sure it isn't this one? You know, that kind of thing. And they don't show enough of a range of choices. There's a lot of little tricks to play in order to kind of like forwarding that card like a magician does in some respects.
So
Do this way, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So to the people out there that's listening, man, you watching a real live person, man, that his life was changed. Because I remember him telling me way back that he came to Philadelphia to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Go to school, you know. And he ended up in prison innocently changed the whole course of why he came from Puerto Rico over here.
Wow.
You know, changed the whole course. And we're not talking about just a Latino guy randomly. We're talking about somebody that's brilliant. Because this guy is brilliant. Brilliant. Know the whole history of Puerto Rico from beginning to end. It's a brilliant guy, man, that ended up in prison. So it's not just random guys that was out in the corner. It's somebody that, know a couple of things. It could happen to you, people. Don't think it can't. It could happen to you, man.
Sure.
Take heed. Because we tell these stories for a reason. To try to deter people from ending up in our situation. Mm-hmm. If you're ever driving through a place and you see cops, drive away. Do not drive towards the cops. Because that might be the day that could change your life. A lot of us, we do that. We see cops, we want to stand there with our phones and today's time and record stuff. My man, that could end you up in prison. Here you got a guy that was just breezing through. And he just happened to stumble up on a crime scene and got caught, in 18 years.
I want to correct myself. I had mentioned a con man who had put a lot of people, sent a guy to death row he was a guy that jailhouse snitch kind of idea. I underestimated this guy. His name was Paul Skalnick, and he actually, his testimony convicted dozens of people and sent 4 people to death row.
Oh, wow.
To date. And this article, if you want to look it up, is called How This Con Man's Wild Testimony Sent Dozens to Jail and 4 to Death Row. And it's an article written by Pamela Koloff, December 4th, 2019, and that is the New York Times Magazine. It's a feature cover article. And it was hard to put it down once you started reading it.
Wow.
And it was almost unbelievable because you figure after a couple of times people get the idea this guy's not too credible, but because he would get released on parole and get rearrested within months and sometimes weeks.
Well, they are what they call in the system professional snitches.
Right.
Where the DAs, they get used for different cases. They get put in different prisons to fabricate stories. And then they show up and you don't even know that person.
Right.
I never even talked to that person, but he claims he know you. He was in the cell with you. And he probably was. 'Cause the jail was so big.
When I was in prison, I like to talk, about my case, about my innocence, but I would not give you too many details because for that reason, I was afraid that with somebody would come.
Sure.
Oh, he told me this, he told me that. I said, no,
Right.
I was talking about my case in general, whatever was public.
Right.
But I never spoke about
because
details of the case.
It's just hard, man, that you're already innocent in prison.
Right.
And now you got somebody to try to bury you
Well,
with
there's-
they bull crap.
There's documentation in this case that Mr. Skalnick was actually moved in the prison itself to be closer to somebody.
Oh, my God.
So
They do that every day.
So they could claim
They do
that
that
he
every
told
day.
him.
Oh, my God.
So he
That's
told him his
crazy.
story.
It's sad, man.
And there's one guy who saw it coming because of his reputation. He was telling him, I don't want to be near this guy. Why am I near this guy's cell? And that they just ignored him.
The thing that people don't understand is in today's
Wow.
Department of Correction is nothing but videos and cameras, right? And in some prison, there's only one gymnasium where you got to go. Sometimes they just put everybody there and then use the tape and say, you see, they're in the same vicinity. They socializing. And sometimes you might not even know the person. You just happen to be sitting next to the person because that's the way the prison is structured. So we got to be careful, people, that, when you end up in these situations, the best thing to do is play the fifth. I don't want to speak to nobody unless I have my attorney present. And no matter how much pressure, no matter how many times they smack you around, because it does happen in these interrogation rooms, no matter how many times they threat you with putting you in prison for life, keep your mouth shut. That's the best advice we're going to give you today. And again, if y'all want to contact Alfredo Dominique, y'all can inbox us. If y'all want to
En contra yo, ¿de qué en contra yo?
contract him for speaking engagement, y'all can inbox us. I think y'all should bring him to speak to your organization, youth, organization, whatever, because it's a unique story. And like I said, it's a story of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. This is somebody that never committed a crime and was released by the deadliest district attorney in America. So that speaks highly of his innocence. Again, this is our first show of the year. We want to thank everybody out there for sticking with us. We be back again with some more real stories. This year, we turning it up. We turning it up. We trying to keep this thing going. We using this platform to bring awareness to the criminal justice bullcrap that's going on in our city. And if anybody want to join us, inbox me or go to Westchester University, our chief sponsors of the show. You know, they have great services up there. You listening to A Justice Conversation on Usala Radio. We see you next week. I am your co-host, Suave Gonzalez. This is the great host, the one and only, Dr. Brian O'Neill. Our magnificent guest. We hope he keep coming back to tell his story because we see all the people that's tapping in. We thank everybody on Facebook that's supporting us. And we see you next week. Our show is produced by Dylan and is sponsored by Westchester University. You're listening to A Justice Conversation on Osala Radio.
Thanks for tuning in.
Okay.
Welcome back to Justice Conversations. From the ivory tower to the streets with Dr. Brian O'Neill and Luis Suave Gonzalez. Alfredo Dominique talking about wrongful convictions. Dominique having done 18 years of a life sentence, been out since 2005, been exonerated of that crime. United States courts are supposed to be the guardians of justice, yet incorrect verdicts occurred far too often. Since 1989, the United States has used DNA testing to exonerate 225 innocent people after they spent years in captivity. At least 123 people have been exonerated from death row since the 1970s. Condemning death row, condemning the innocent makes a mockery of justice, robbing men and women of dignity, relationship, time, experience, opportunity. Talking about what somebody can do in such a situation and who can they reach out to. There's some organizations out there which you talk about. One is called the Prison Fellowship. Another one is called the Innocence Project.
Yes.
Those are two organizations that fight for The Innocence Project is largely limited to DNA type situations, though. There's not much they can do in cases where there isn't DNA evidence to be used, to be challenged. In the case of yours case, it would have been very difficult for them to do much because it was based solely on
I
eyewitness.
wrote a couple of organizations. Nobody wanted to touch my case.
Right.
Well,
Now, if there was physical evidence to dispute, they could do that, but with just erroneous eyewitness, there's not much they can do.
Yeah.
Right.
But most of the time, a lot of these organizations don't want to touch cases like his.
Right.
Because of the people in place, and they feel that we don't have no support from the people in place. You know, in today's time, in 2018 and 19 and 20, we have a wonderful DA in office that's willing to hear about these cases, which make it easier for organizations to present cases that they believe are innocent.
Right.
And this is why in Philadelphia today we see the integrity unit. This is why we see people walking out of prison exonerated, because we have people in positions that's willing to listen to that evidence, even if they don't have DNA. Because a lot of the exonerees that we seen in the last year, a lot of them is not through DNA. Some of them are, but not all of them.
Right.
So it takes cooperation from people in places that believe in justice and holding up to the oath they took when they came into office to be fair across the line.
And not being afraid to admit that mistakes happen.
Right.
In the case of for Central Park 5, the widely well-known case in which 5 young kids were wrongfully convicted of rape, what was really tragic about the case, besides their lives, was that the real person, the perpetrator, continued to maim and kill people afterwards because they ignored that particular person as a suspect. They didn't follow up on the leads. They just stopped their case at that point. They got so attached to their false narrative, they wouldn't let go of it. Even though there was DNA at the scene, none of it belonged to the 5 people they arrested. And there was unidentified DNA, which turned out to, of course, be the DNA of the real perpetrator. And it wasn't until he confessed while he was incarcerated, when he met up with one of the Central Park 5 guys, and he started feeling a sense of consciousness for whatever reason.
Right.
And he sort of blew the whistle on himself. That's the only reason that it started to unravel, and they eventually all were exonerated. Well, they all got released. But part of their bargain was they did get a settlement eventually, but part of the bargain there was the DA admitted no wrongdoing.
In Pennsylvania, they got immunity.
Right.
They got immunity.
Right.
You can sue them.
And there were no consequences to the DA's office.
Yeah.
None. Nobody had to admit we screwed up. Nobody had to apologize even.
Yeah.
But the people spoke.
Nothing.
The people spoke in that case,
right?
Because the DA in that case eventually lost her job.
Well, you mean the book project she had?
Lost her job, lost her book deals.
Right.
Like, cause she was profiting, she was living the life. And, like nothing. Okay, you don't have to admit wrong, but the people that's in position today in these institutions was like, we can't have that.
Yeah.
So she lost her job as a professor, lost her writing contract, which, is fairly right. You destroy 5 people's lives.
That only happened recently with a Netflix dramatization of the Central Park 5 case.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a documentary done by Ken Burns years ago.
Right.
And then there was a dramatic rendition of that. I guess it was like a 4 or 5 part series that Netflix did.
It's
and that caused the whole thing to
it's
open up again.
Yeah, my sister told me about that. I can watch.
It was all timing.
I get very emotional.
Sure.
I mean, I start tear off. If I watch...
It flips too many switches for you, I'm sure.
I think that Ava DuVernay documentary, When They See Us, was really, it hit home because the time that we in today with the mass incarceration being in the frontline issue, it just hit home for a lot of people. And again, I keep saying that in the early 80s, there was nobody speaking about mass incarceration.
All right.
This was like, if he's in jail, that means he must have did something.
Yeah.
And there was forgotten people. It's now that we have young, radical minds out in the front line that's looking into all these old convictions, saying, wait a minute, it's got the same pattern. You know, how is it that one detective got 20 people serving life? And it's like the same pattern.
What happened in my
pattern.
case?
Right.
You know, that one detective in Philadelphia, Martinez, he had a whole bunch of people. Whole bunch of people. I know like 5 other guys because we was in the same institution. So this just one detective. And every case helped the other case to get out. But in the early 80s, man, there was no social media. There was there was no accountability.
Right.
If you was a detective, you just ran randomly around the street doing what you want to do, and I'm going to set you up if I ain't like you, and that's it. Times has changed. We got social media. We got young people that's taking these positions at district attorneys with a purpose.
Well, you have some progressive district attorneys in the world now, too,
Right.
that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
And you actually have been getting elected, and folks like that weren't getting elected in that time period.
Right. So
They were being portrayed as soft on crime and would stand no chance of getting elected.
Yeah.
So it's timing, man. It's timing, but at the same time, it's a shame because we see plenty of lives destroyed, man. You know, like, and again, these brothers should be compensated. You know, Texas got what, 80,000?
80,000. The feds give $50,000 per year. Yeah.
It should be $1 million for debt, for real. It should be $1 million a day for every day you spend in prison. They should give you $1 million.
Well, if you ask the general public how much
If they give
money
me
would you
$1,
take?
I apologize in public, I take it a deal.
Well, how much money would you take per year to go to prison, leave your family, leave your
I
job,
know.
and deal with the prison life? How much of that would you be willing to do for how much money?
That's not enough money.
Right.
That's not
It's
enough
really
money,
hard, it's
man,
hard.
because it's a traumatic experience.
Right.
It's like, you don't know if you're going to make it alive. That's the crazy part about going to prison. You go to prison with 1 year and catch some type of disease in prison and just die. You know, we've seen that with some of our friends that coming out. And when you get sick in prison, they don't tell you you're sick. Especially if you're a lifer. They don't tell you you're sick till you dying. You know, so people are getting released from prison with all types of disease. So imagine you going to prison innocently and coming out with all types of disease that you're about to die. Like, damn, you didn't deserve that.
Right.
You didn't deserve that. So I just want people out there to be more conscious of what they do, their surroundings. Like I said, keep your mouth shut. This is not me advocating for the street code or none of that. All I'm saying is if you ever get arrested, keep your mouth shut. Most of the people that end up in these jams are people that get confessions. They are pressured because they want to go home. They're hungry. Listen, man, just going to have to sacrifice a little bit of hunger pain and keep your mouth shut. Because once you start talking, they're going to try to trick you. And once they trick you with one trick, you done. And if you agree to become a snitch for them, you still done. Because when they done with you, they're going to put you in prison. But they don't have no more use for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the best thing is keep your mouth shut. If you wrongly get arrested, I want my lawyer. I don't want to speak to nobody. Period. Just keep your mouth shut. And don't sign nothing either. Nothing. Don't sign nothing.
I won't. I'll take your advice, Bobby.
No, hey, listen, it's serious, man. You know, I know people in prison right now. They're in prison because they signed a piece of blank paper, and next thing you know, is a statement on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, my advice is take heed, be safe, and don't sign nothing. Keep your mouth shut.
Well, one of the way they manipulated the kids in the Central Park 5 case was that they lied to them and said that they co-conspirators were in the other room fingering them. And that this is your last chance, you know, to say what really happened because your buddy's over there spilling the beans.
They tried to do it with my co-defender. He said,
Right.
You just said that you shoot this guy, blah, blah, blah. He said, no, he can't say that. Because he didn't shoot it. He didn't shoot it. I didn't shoot it.
So
Nobody
they
shoot
did try
nobody.
that technique with you.
That's the oldest technique in the book. Your co-defender, your man next door say you did it. You know, he's telling on you and he ain't going to be out there messing with your girl. Okay, so be it. And next thing you know, you get caught up in your emotion and you start talking to all the wrong things. Next thing you know, you're not only getting convicted for what they say you did, but for some other stuff. Because they're going to try to solve whatever other case they got open. That's just how it goes. There is no good cop when it comes to these situations and when they giving you these interviews. They're going to try the good cop, bad cop. If you sitting in a police station, it's the cops against you. There is no cop, I'm with you, I'm your friend, you could trust me. No. When they put that nice hoagie or that cheesesteak smoking with that soda and you hungry, I know you want it, but don't go for it. I know a guy right now, serving life in Huntington Prison named Luis Hernandez. They signed a confession to murder because he was hungry. They gave him a cheesesteak and a soda. And he's been in jail almost 30-something years now.
Wow.
Can't get that confession back. And he ain't do it. So, it's proved. It's proven. Keep your mouth shut, people. Doc, take it home.
Absolutely. Good advice. Well, we're going to close out this program. I'd like to thank Alfredo for coming in and sharing his story with us. I'm sure a lot of it's not pleasant to remember. And the fact that you've picked it up without any bitterness.
Yeah.
And we wish you the best of luck pursuing your life and the free that they're out there in the world with. And hopefully somebody will contact you to make a little bit of speaking engagement. Because I think it would be good and be very eye-opening. Speaking of the university as criminal justice majors, for example, to hear how the system is not always perfect. So thanks again for tuning in. I've been your host, Dr. Brian O'Neill, along with Luis Suave Gonzalez. Do we know who we're having on the program next week, Suave?
I don't know yet, but it will be interesting. Tune in to the podcast on Tuesdays on Usala Media Radio. And let's make this happen, man. Our platform is your platform. Our voice is your voice. You're listening to a Justice Conversation.
Thanks also to our producer,
Dylan, and our chief sponsor, Westchester University.
And our music's by Moby. Thanks for tuning in.